All right. I don't know why I always start a podcast by saying, all right. It's like I'm Matthew McConaughey or something. Anyway, Trever Steel, Through the Noise podcast, business, life, and lies. I'm super excited about today. We've got my new friend, Joshua Brown. He is the owner of Brown's Pressure Washing out of Nashville. And I believe they have multiple locations. I'll let him explain some of that. But the most exciting part to me, the part that I'm excited to have him on as a guest is that he's the pressure washing pastor, and he is truly living life and building a business that has a mission. Um, and so, man, I'm just super excited to get started. Josh, welcome.
Hey, Trevor, thank you so much for taking time and having me on your show. I'm super pumped. Hopefully, I'll add a ton of value to you and anybody that might be listening today.
Yeah, man, no doubt. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's dig in. Let's start from the beginning. You know, let's just see what happens. We're not really we don't have much of a plan here, but I think that your story is incredible and a lot of people will benefit from it. So let's just get it started.
You're throwing grenades at the very beginning of the show to just see where we end up, blowing up at. But long story short, former drug dealer, pothead, high school dropout. My mom was 15 years old when my dad said, "Hey, I'll pay for his abortion, but I won't be in his life." He was 21 years old, and my mom had nobody. The house that she was adopted into, dad went to prison for things he was doing to her at 13, and her adopted mom was pain medication and alcohol. And so, by the grace of God, my mom chose to give me life. But that doesn't mean Skittles, rainbows, and I don't know, unicorns. It was a lot more challenging than that. I would say a lot of trauma, living on the streets, from school to school, projects, soup kitchens, church fellowship halls. And that ultimately led me to why I dropped out. Ended up, thought I was like a baller, smoking blunts, smoking, weed. You're just waking up in the morning, and I really was living a meaningless life. And I didn't realize that until I got in a really bad car wreck, following a friend of mine named Pookie. Shout out to all the Pookies that might be listening in, or everybody has a friend named Pookie. Chances are, Trevor, you got a Pookie in your
I do.
store. And so but got in a bad car wreck, and from that car wreck, I was just processing, man, if I would have died, my life was making an impact on nobody. Nobody. Like the dudes I was hanging around with, they would be like, they'd be remembering me every time they might pour out some alcohol. I mean, for me, there had to be more. And so I showed up the last night of a revival service, and I heard what every dude without a dad wants to hear from a dad. I heard the words, "Joshua, I love you." And from there, I went forward, gave the pastor my pot, God my heart, and went back to school, got a GED, pastoral ministries degree, Christian counseling, 22 years of vocational ministry experience. And then I got burnt out inside just day-to-day growing events, programs inside the church. Did what anybody else would do, Googled top 5 businesses you can start for 5K or less. It led me to this moment right here. That's it. That's how I did it. I could have started taking pictures of cats, or I could have started cleaning chimneys, but for less than 5K, I could start a pressure washing company. And so I had a friend of mine in Winston-Salem, Parker's Pressure Washing, a friend of mine named Keith Parker. I worked with him for a half a day. He made $800 in 4 hours. And I was like, bro, all he did is shoot some soap on like a deck, some steps, let it dwell. He did pop a light while I was there. He hit a bulb that ended up overheating. It was on, and poof. So I learned that you shouldn't do that. But I walked away from that, and I realized, man, I'd have to work Uber, Lyft, Papa John's all week to make $800. And that's why I went back home, built a boat trailer, grabbed my Honda Odyssey van because I had a bunch of kids. Put some stickers on it. And year 1, we did 225,000. Year 2, 443. Year 3, 700 and something. Then 900, and all while working a full-time job inside the church. And then in 2020, just decided to step out. But I'm sharing way too much. I'm sure you've got other questions, but that's kind of what led us into pressure washing.
Yeah, dude, that's incredible. And so many people in the pressure, I've been pressure washing for 23 years. I dropped out of high school to do it. So I've got a similar, of course I had a father. My father's great, but I had a similar kind of light bulb moment where it was like, man, this is easy money, you know? And so there comes a moment where you have to make a decision whether you're going to go this path or this path. And honestly, just school was never on the table for me. Further school was never on the table. So I signed up as a homeschooler, dropped out of high school, and kind of cheated the system. Signed up as a in a Christian-based homeschool association. Went to my local tech school like 2 to 3 days a week. So I was my junior year, I was barely going to school, and I graduated with a diploma from a tech school like a year earlier than everybody else. It's kind of ridiculous, but I have a diploma from Grace Homeschool Association.
Let's go. I think that's the same name of our homeschool association. But let's get into that for a second. If you're a dude, or if you're listening and you're trying to decide what kind of education you're going to give your kids, there is a conversation here. And I've got 6 kids, and I've come to the conclusion that there are kids that do great in a classroom, and then there's kids that just need a hammer, some nails, and some wood, and you don't mess them up. And what happens when you take a creative kid and try to make him a student? They feel like they're in the wrong box. And so I really think we need to recognize who our kids are, what their giftings are, and don't try to conform them to what everybody else says they should be doing and studying, but really find out what they're great at. And that's the power of homeschool.
Yeah, man, I love that. So I was that square kid trying to get forced into a round peg or a round hole, right? It was not going to happen. So I relate to this on a deep level, emotional level, you know, through the Noise podcast. That part of that name is me living into my calling through the noise, no matter who says anything to me, no matter what I tell myself, stay focused, stay the course. That was where the name came from. So, you know, most of my life, I thought I was an idiot. Literally, I thought I was stupid most of my life. Turns out I'm actually very intelligent, highly intelligent, gifted in many different ways. I see the world differently than most people. When I encounter a problem, I have a big picture mindset, and I'm able to dissect it and put it back together really quickly to solve problems and create solutions where other people don't see a solution, right? But nobody recognized that in me until I recognized it in myself at the age of, you know, basically 29, 30 years old. And it's just, you know, I wonder if I was put in the right situation, if what I could have been. Of course, you can't go back. Why would you? But
yeah.
Anyway.
I have an 8-year-old, and I was taking him to school, and I was like, dude, this guy, when I say school, we have enrichment programs. I'll wake up and he'll be inside like the garage, and he'll be making robots out of whatever cardboard, tools, glue, you name it, that he can find. He doesn't want to sit there. And then 2 days ago, you figured this out earlier, but 2 days ago, I'm running around Hendersonville, and I'm thinking, man, I was really bad at school. I would go forward, grab kids' homework that they put in a basket. I'd find the kid that didn't put their name on it, and I put my name on it. And I'd be like, so I made good grades. But the things I excelled on was when they had toilet paper rolls, some popsicle sticks, and they said, hey, make something fun out of this. And you're turning stuff that people throw away into something that's fun, engaging, a toy of some sort. And so it really comes down to like our makeups, you know, and so everyone's a genius. This is Einstein. Do you know this quote? I'm going to totally jack it up, but it's something to the effect, everyone's a genius. But if an elephant lives their whole life thinking they were made to fly, they'll live their whole life feeling as though they're a failure. And so it's really figuring out what your design is. What are you gifted at? What's your story? And then what's your proximity? Yep. This gets into finding purpose in a secondary calling. And that's not where we're going, but
why not?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can.
I love it. That's honestly, it's the theme of my life at this point. So let's dive in, man. I could not agree with that more. I think when I talk to people that seem to be struggling or maybe not finding their purpose or their drive or their vision, I get it. I think it all comes back to the gifts and living into your specific skill sets, right? There's a reason you have those skill sets. Those are God-given skill sets. And if you're good at something, you should dive into that. You should make sure that you're doubling down. I totally agree with the concept of, working on your weaknesses and things like that, but that should be on the back burner. That should be like when you have some free time, whatever that means. I don't even know what that is, but you should double down on what you're good at and focus on that. And if you do that, it'll eventually turn into a passion, because it's God given. I truly believe that.
Yeah, so just to put some frameworks inside of this, there's theologically there is a primary calling and a secondary calling inside of all of our lives. And I really believe this is true. And I think if you process it more, it might make things that are unclear. Have you ever sat and got, I don't see that you wear glasses, but maybe you have contacts, but when you sit inside of an optometrist chair, they'll go click, click. There we go. Let's go. They'll go click, click. Which is better, A or B? And then you end up saying, oh yeah, I like B better. Now, which one looks better? A.
Mhm.
And then they just go all the way in. Life in many ways is like we're living inside of a chair and we're trying to figure out what brings the most clarity to our lives.
Yep.
And if we can get the primary calling of our lives dialed in and then the secondary calling dialed in, we then can live on mission wherever we're at. And so life becomes a joy. No matter if you're scooping poop, I see this course on the Upflip Academy course is rolling on starting this pooper scooper business. Whether you're doing pooper scooper or whether you're president of the United States, which I don't know who wants to be that guy right now, you can find joy in whatever you're doing if you get the primary and the secondary right. So let me share with you real quick. If you were to have a square and you were to put a line down the middle, you write primary on one side, secondary on the other. Primary calling is what every human being on the planet needs to get clear. And this gets into who am I, why am I here, and what really matters. These are primary, big, big questions. What I would argue is that ultimately you're here to be in a relationship with Jesus Christ. I really believe that he was crucified, came back to life, and ended up changing the way our whole lives live. And I think the Holy Spirit's here. I think we can be forgiven of our sins. And so I think first primary is to come in a relationship with God through the personhood of Jesus. I'm a pastor. I'm not telling everybody else to think like I think. But man, for me, once you experience forgiveness and love from your sins, it's a whole lot easier to give it to everybody else. And so you end up experiencing a relationship with God, primary purpose. And then everywhere you're at, you're like, man, I just want to be on mission with Jesus. I want to spend time with him. I want to be where the Spirit leads me, and I want to love people everywhere I am. These are primary.
Mhm.
Secondary comes into this. What's your story? What's your giftings? What's your proximity? You got to get those three questions right. And as you get clarity on those three questions, you get really good at enjoying whatever you're doing. And your story is this. It's your story. Like you shared a little bit about your story with me as far as, getting a GED or dropping out and going to a trade school. That's part of your story, but there's so much more to your story that we didn't go into, that if we end up jumping into, you'll end up seeing that you had some valleys inside your life that you have to make sure you get through and reconcile and process and share. And as we go through our stories, it helps us identify, why do we get so mad when X, Y, and Z happens, when a team member does this or a customer does that, or my son or daughter or kids or girlfriend. The way we respond to a given situation ultimately reflects how much work we've done in our past stories. Because in reality, our response is a reflection of our past. And the more peace we have with our past, the more present we can be in any given situation. Does that make a little bit of sense?
No, that makes 100% perfect sense.
And then so you get right inside of your story, and then you get into your giftings. What are you really good at? If we watch Alex Hormozy, the next thing we think of is like, man, we need to go to open up a school and we need to start
Yeah.
acquiring businesses. Well, guess what? Not everybody is great at that. Find out what you're great at. Stop trying to be somebody you're not and be the person that you just are. But before you do what you're really great at, try to make sure you've done some healing in your past and then just dial in your greatness and surround yourself with other individuals who are great at things that you're not great with. And this gets into Dan Sullivan's book, Who Not How, which is, I think, a great book to say, you don't need to know how to do everything. You just need to surround yourself with who's that know how to do, and then you bring your greatness with you inside of whatever team, whatever project, whatever work that you're doing. Does that make a little bit of sense?
I think I'm going to turn my camera off. We're just going to zoom in on you, man. You just crushed that. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I love it.
Yeah.
I want to hear about proximity, though, because that one's, you throw me for a loop on that one.
Yeah, this is a big word, and I didn't learn it until maybe about 2.5 years ago when I started processing it. Someone invited me to a proxy group, and I didn't know what proxy means, but I know now. Where are you? You can't be somewhere you're not. And so what are the people that you're in proximity to? That matters. You can't say, hey, I want to start acquiring businesses, or I want to be the next John Maxwell, and you don't have any John Maxwells in your life. So in order to really dial in on your story, what your giftings are, and where you should work or where you should go or what you should do, you really need to ask the question, what are you in proximity to? And so it's hard to solve problems that you're not in proximity to. You got to draw near to those problems or solve the ones that you're actually close to. And then same thing with people. Who are the people in your life that you're in proximity to? And the quality and the direction of your life will ultimately be determined by the proximity that you're around. So you have to look around and say, okay, who am I listening to? Who am I spending time with? What career path I'm at? And if you've got a calling and a burning desire to do something, or a burden, get in proximity to those people and those places. And then the reality of you being the person that you desire to be is more likely to happen. But if you look around and you ain't got those people and you ain't got those places, chances are you're not in proximity to that. And so if you look today, what are you in proximity to? It's what is in your hands right now. You know, it's not something that's outside of your hands. Explain to me what you hear me trying to say.
Yeah, be where your feet are. I think is one of the things I say to myself a lot, because I'm a visionary, and obviously you are too. I'm constantly living in the future and planning and dreaming, thinking big picture, trying to stay focused, stay on course, and build this influential empire that I've built in my mind, right? So when I'm making incremental steps towards that, the external world, other people look at me and be like, hey man, you're doing it, keep it up. In my head, I'm saying, what's taking so long? You know, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. I was supposed to be at 22 million by now, you know, like what's going on? And so I have to constantly remind myself to go back to where you are. You know, you're not living in the real world. So that's proximity. You know, I need to be where my feet are, where God has given me, use the resources God has given me today. And I say this a lot as well, you know, that the end goal, where I want to be, the person I intend to be, doing the things, running the businesses that I intend to run 10, 15 years from now, I'm not capable of that today. I'm just not. I don't have the skill set. I don't have the mindset. I don't have the confidence to get there yet. So God's still teaching me things, right? But I can't learn if I'm living there and upset about not actually being there, you know? So I have to be where my feet are, pay attention to my proximity, and just do the work, right? So that's kind of how I interpret it.
Yeah. So think about the book Atomic Habits, James Clear. You're familiar with this book? You're about to pull it out from your back pocket, aren't you?
Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, for sure. Great book.
He talks about if you're going to set up a habit, you got to make it easy. He's got certain, rubrics that he puts around this idea. Whatever you desire to do, you've got to put it closer to you. And so if your goal is to say, hey, I'm going to start waking up at, let's say, 7 a.m., which that's lunchtime in my head. It's 7. But if you're going to do that, you've got to end up bringing 7 a.m. in proximity to you. And so if you're used to getting up at 10, how do you bring 7 closer to you? You've got to figure out, how do I get closer to 7? If you're saying, hey, I want to run a pressure washing company, but you have no equipment, how do you bring equipment in proximity to you? You have to surround yourself with the thing or the people in order to do the thing that you want to do, but you got to be in proximity to. And so it's living in reality, and then it's making sure reality comes to you, which is why having a coach, having a podcast, having an audiobook is so powerful if you're trying to scale from, $30,000 a year to 100 to 2 to whatever it is. Surround yourself with people that are doing those things. Now you're in proximity to those people, and the likelihood of you doing what they do is going to happen because you're going to become like they become, because you're going to think like they think. And so that gets into the think, be, do framework.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I think subliminally, maybe I didn't even know that I was doing it, and I'm kind of processing right now. When I started this podcast, I had no idea why I was doing it. I'm an extreme introvert, an ADHD introvert. So I don't thrive in these situations at all. I'm going to be tired when this is done because luckily there's no, I don't see the audience. So that kind of helps. But I think one of the main reasons I did this was just that. Like, I'm surrounding myself with people like you, people like John Majek, and other guests that I know I can learn from, that are doing things that I want to be a part of and want to learn from. And so it's subliminally, I think I was already doing that. Didn't even know it.
Yeah, same here. And then anybody that's listening, the reason that they're listening is they're trying to solve a problem. And that problem is either people, profits, or products that they're trying to learn from or move to. And so as long as you're consuming more of that and less of things that are distractions, you'll get traction, which is, Gino Wickham principle with traction, rocket fuel, and the different things that he creates. Is we have to eliminate people, processes, products, problems that end up preventing us from making traction inside our lives. And so I'd say if you're listening today and you're trying to figure out how to solve a problem, identify the problem that you're trying to solve. And then once you identify it, you start making traction on whatever is distracting you from solving that problem. And what I've noticed, I have a little coaching community called Mission Plan AI. And really, it's doing the right things the right way consistently over time generates profitability. It generates more people, and it generates, profit. I guess the thing that we're looking for. So for us, it's create jobs, make disciples, serve the city. If we're solving those problems by doing the right thing the right ways consistently over time, we're making traction. But removing anything that makes as a distraction from that is required in order to do that. And when I started the business, I had to learn how to give up video games at nighttime. It was a distraction from me getting traction inside of the business. I had to also give up other things inside my life, like working out, which was a good thing, but I just didn't have time to be a good dad, to also work a full-time job and a side hustle. You can only have so many things inside your life. So you have to remove everything that's not propelling you forward. And that can be people, it can be YouTube channels, it can be the wrong influencers.
Yeah, love that. And so I think any entrepreneur that's in the trenches knows that exact feeling, running out of time, feeling like they can't get it all done. If you're there, which you are, because we all are, in some capacity. It's not like we all have it figured out at all times. Some weeks are better than others, but there's a book called Buy Back Your Time. Dan Martell. I'm sure you've read that one. Every book you've named, I was like, yes, that's a great book.
Identify, transfer, and fill.
That's right.
Yes. Bottom line.
So, I had John Majak talking about him again, and he had an impact on me. He has what he calls his 7 daily disciplines. And I thought it was a great name. I was like, dude, you need to write that book. But basically it's 7 things that and they're all simple, very easily attainable things that he considers non-negotiable that he has to do on a daily basis. And I took that concept and I said, man, that could either eat up a lot of your day, or you could do it all while you're doing your walk and run, not all of it, but half of it. you could send a text saying, hey man, just, one of his things was encouraging somebody. Hey man, thought you did a really great job on this thing, or whatever it is. Like you can get all that fit into your workout time. I thought it was really cool. Listen, you could have a quiet time while you're working out. I do it every single time. It's my favorite part of the day.
The 7 daily disciplines. Absolutely love that.
It's a great name, right?
Yeah. And I've got something similar, but if you don't look at it every day, you forget it. And
Exactly.
so I don't know, my camera's not pulling it up, but I have a full focus planner, and at the front of it, I've written out, who I desire to be, which I think trumps everything. If we have a
Do it.
few minutes.
Yeah, do it.
So for me, who you are trumps what you do, period. If I think about at the end of my life, when it's all said and done and people are at my casket or ashes and they're like thinking about me, I don't want them to say, yeah, he ran some ultra marathons and yeah, he crushed that savage race, or man, his Thai food, which it is off the hook, dude. I can make some excellent Thai food. Had a guy come in from Thailand and teach me. But that is not what I want people to remember. I want them to remember these things. He was completely present wherever he was. Presence.
So good and so hard.
My wife wants me here, not there when I'm here. My kids, my team members.
You just hit a nerve with me.
Hey, it's present. If you think about what really matters in this life, it's being present with the person that you're right in front of you. And I've got to remind myself that, hey, that is the only thing that matters right now, is this person that's in front of me. My head needs to turn off X, Y, and Z. Number 2, not only do I want to be present, but I want people to experience love when I'm in the room, which is a struggle because I have expectations on my kids. But at the end of the day, I want them to experience someone that loves them and values them. One reason is I never had a dad. Never had a father figure that said, hey, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're valuable. Never. And that is the thing that every child desires to hear from their parents. I love you. You're valuable. You're beautiful. I'm proud of you. I want to be that when I'm present wherever I am. And I'm only going to be able to go through the who I want to be. I won't be able to go through priorities and ambitions and daily rhythms and food I got to say yes and no to. But number 3 is spirit-filled, which means I'm really spending time meditating and being present. I really do believe the Holy Spirit is here and I have the ability to spend time with him. And so I want to be thinking the thoughts that the Holy Spirit thinks and not the thoughts that Josh thinks, because I might try to use somebody and not serve somebody. And the Holy Spirit desires for me to serve somebody, period.
Yep.
Jesus gave us the greatest example. He took off his outer robe, got on his hands and feet, and started washing his disciples' feet. This was before he left. He got up and he said, do you understand what I've done for you today? If your Lord and Master wash your feet, you go and wash each other's feet. I want to be that guy to my family, to my friends, to my community, and wherever I am. That was number 3. And I only got 2 more. A visionarian is who I desire to be. I want to be thinking the future, which is problematic because everyone else is thinking about the future I casted yesterday and not about the new one today that we're thinking about. But I want to learn to be thinking about the future while being present in the moment. And then lastly is physically fit, mentally, spiritually, mind, body, and spirit. I desire to be a good example of what I pass on to my wife and kids. My life has been impacted by dudes who didn't take care of themselves. My biological dad, who I never met, died at 41 of colon cancer. And yes, there's things that are genetics, but there's also things that we can do to help and hinder those genetics. And then step parents and alcoholic and abuse, like that's been the normative inside of my family. I want to show my family something different than that. So discipline's required. So those are my 5 who I desire to be goals.
Love it. Yeah. So I think that you and John should definitely connect, first of all. But I think it would be more helpful to people. It's one thing to say, here are my 7 daily disciplines, and this is You should do this too. No, it's going to be different for everybody, right? But it's more along the lines of if you could help people learn how to create their own process, their own systems, how to. I mean, this is integral stuff we're talking about. This is vision and drive and living with purpose. Like, you cannot have these things without your why. And this is how most people don't even know how to have that conversation. Like, how do I start discovering what my why is? Well, this is how. I mean, you're really tapping into something here. I think I want to encourage you to pursue it, because I think you could help a lot of people through this process. I mean, mine is decent, but I can already tell that yours is way more thought out and scripted. And I mean, you've challenged me. I'm gonna go to work on mine probably today.
Yeah, you have to carve out blocks in order to do it, and then you need some questions to be able to reflect yourself. And so, if I were to give you a question, it would be the question that you first need to ask is who do you want to be? And then you need to just sit inside of that, and then just come back and forth. And if you had somebody that you trust that you're sharing with, and they're able to just ask you questions, it can help you find, 3 to 5 B goals, as far as like, when I'm in the room with somebody, who do I want them to experience? And you're working towards that experience ultimately. And what it does is it reveals any character flaws, competency flaws that are currently going on, because a lot of times people only get our best when we're completely whole and present with the people that we're in front of. If we have like quotas or jobs or trying to hit revenue goals, which are all important, but if those are the primary things that we're being led by, and not being led by, hey, I want this person to experience blank. And this gets into how you fire a team member, how you onboard, how you coach somebody that isn't responding a way that you would want them to. If you see, so we have, X amount of trucks every morning that leave in Nashville. And if they leave 30 minutes late because of their send off, there's multiple ways for me to handle or to approach that. But the question is, how do you approach it in a way that reflects who you desire to be? And if you already know who you desire to be, you're not going to come in hot. You're going to be like thinking of an intentional way to have a conversation to lead your whoever's over that, ours would be operation, to a conversation of saying, hey, is there a way that we can talk about send off, where we can respect all the guys' times? Because if you got 10 guys and they're all leaving 30 minutes late, that's 5 hours of productivity time that is not respectful. And so how do you handle that? All goes down to your B goals. So you can talk scripture, you can be prayerful, then it's not a hard conversation. It's a gentle conversation, because the person that's coming to you, they genuinely love you, they care, and they're just trying to solve this problem.
So good, man. And so I'm a systems person. Everything I do, I think in terms of systems. I just can't help it. It is what it is. It's probably because I have extreme ADHD and I have a bad memory. I shouldn't even say that out loud because I'm speaking it into existence, but it's true. I struggle remembering certain things. So what that did was it turned me into a systems guru. I've got everything completely dialed in. And the reason for that is because, well, I'm just not that smart, so I had to figure out a way to make sure that we were all on the same page and I remembered what I needed to remember. But now I would take that piece that you have about, who you want to be. You could take that entire document or whatever, type it up, put it into ChatGPT, and tell ChatGPT who you want to be, and then have ChatGPT help you communicate to specific employees. It could be a text, it could be an email, and you could say, according to this DISC assessment, because this is how they like to communicate. Because we're not great at that. You are, I can tell, but I'm not. I'm not great at communicating with staff on their level when they're making mistakes. It's much easier for me to be like, dude, what are you doing? Did you read the operations manual that I spent 20 years building, or are we just doing whatever you want to do? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, great job on creating a book. Did you hire somebody to help you do it, or did you do
This
all
was
the
this was pre-AI.
okay.
Yeah,
See, that's
pre-AI. So it's all
heavy
me.
heavy lifting. Well, I want to get into culture then, because there's nothing more important or more powerful, I think, inside your business than culture. And if you don't handle yourself the right way, you can end up creating a culture that's not exciting to be a part of. It ends up becoming something that SUCKs, and then turnover and then hiring becomes exponentially more challenging. And if there was one problem to solve, it's, hey, how do I create a culture that friends bring friends, they tell other people about it, and they stay here.
Yep.
And that gets into how you handle that situation. And so if you are who you desire to be and not who you don't desire to be, the likelihood of culture being something that other people grab a hold of and desire to move into is a game changer. And I think that's what helped make Browns successful at the very beginning, is that whenever somebody would show up, if it started in my driveway, I would always first share something that I read earlier that morning in my quiet time. And I'd be like, hey, I was reading this morning in Matthew 20 about blah, blah, blah. And one thing I was processing was blah, blah, blah. And I want to encourage you today that whatever you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd say, hey, by the way, how can I pray for you guys? And that would be the check-in. I now know it as a check-in. I didn't know it was a check-in back in the day, but now I know that's a check-in. That culture produces value where friends invite friends. They talk about it outside of work. It's mission before business. It's value. And I really think that is the thing. We've had over 60 team members here at Browns. We've only hired one person that wasn't connected to a friend or someone brought somebody.
That's huge.
It's massive. And like we tried the Indeed thing this year. That thing, I mean, I'm not trying to do some
No,
negative.
I hear you.
That's a challenge for sure. But if you solve the culture problem where who you are is really, so like at the end of the day, Trevor, who you are whole is the most beautiful person on the planet. Your wife, your kids, your company, they want to be around that guy. The whole Trevor,
Right.
completely at peace with your past, your present, the fact that you're loved and valued. And then you bring that dude inside of whatever room you're in, and you're not focused on, you're not leading from numbers or you're not leading from productivity, but you're leading from a people and a passion and a purpose and presence. That creates a culture that other people want to be a part of. That's a leader that other people want to follow, and they'll stay there making less money because they're happy. and
Yep.
and then they'll invite other friends. And that's the whole idea, is how do you become who you are wherever you are? And it's doing that deep work of making sure you are who you are, who you desire to be everywhere that you are.
I think first of all, incredible. Every time you speak, it's like you're going to be on big stages. There's no question in my mind. You're the next hip hop preacher. You know Eric Thomas?
Secrets of Success podcast, baby. I
Come
love
on,
those.
man. Come on, dude.
Dude,
It's your boy.
yeah, I love those guys, the hip hop preacher and yeah. So I'm actually with the Dudes Without Dads podcast. That's kind of the flow that we want to have inside of the show, where it's a brotherhood, a community, and they're talking about just normal life. I'm sorry to talk so long. I'll be quiet, but yes.
No, dude, you're killing it. You know, I wish and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to what I'm about to say. You build a platform from day one that's Christ-centered. I'm jealous of that because it's not always easy for me to um, live that out in my business because I didn't set the standard early enough. And I know that sounds like an excuse, and in a lot of ways it probably is. I can make that shift at any point, but you built it into your culture. You built it into your brand, who you are. You're the pressure washing pastor. I'm just Trever Steel, you know? So it's like I've set myself up as being a secular business owner, as you've set yourself up as doing life on a mission. And so when you say you had your team meeting and you told them about the Bible verse you read that morning, it's expected and natural. It might not be as received as well coming from a more secular platform. So if there's anybody out there watching this that's just getting started in their business, or man, I encourage you, if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian, call Joshua. He'll help you out with that. But man, build that structure and that platform early. I'm super jealous of it. And I think it's the reason you've been able to build this culture. And just from our little bit of conversation, I think it's going to expand rapidly because the people that are joining are already on the same mission as you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be joining. They're not going to join the pressure washing pastor if they're not Christians, or they don't want to be a Christian or part of a movement. So I'm jealous of that extremely intentional identity that you've created. And kudos, great job.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional, and I actually thought I left ministry, and so I know I don't know.
You did not.
I thought we did, and so I went through an identity crisis. I wasn't the pressure washing pastor. I was Joshua Brown, and I no longer had people coming up to me. I was no longer teaching classes or on stages and things like that. So I went through a crisis, and I thought I was just Joshua Brown. But here's the interesting thing: as you draw near to God, He draws near to you, and it touches every single thing that your hand touches.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you, don't, man, you may not be at the platform you are today without the decisions you made in the past. And the only thing you can do in the present is, in my head, is say, okay, what does it look like for me to be who I desire to be wherever I am? And then make sure you put those habits into play. And then as you put those habits into play, the pebble and the rift or the wave that goes, it ends up touching everything. And so don't let any, this cracker shell lie believes functions as truth even when it's a lie. Don't let a lie believe that just because you didn't start on something, you can't start spending time with something and let that something end up flowing through you. And it's just bringing down the walls and bringing who you really are out. That's it. All it is. We thought that business was, don't talk about sex. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about religion. Who says that? We are who we are wherever we are. Why not be who we are where we are? Why am I trying to cover up? I'm an undercover whatever. And so anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and then with the listeners, same deal. Is, man, just learn how to get present and do some work, and remember that God loves you, regardless of what's taken place that you've done to others and people have done to you. There's hope and forgiveness found in the Son, Jesus Christ. So,
amen.
Yeah,
I can tell you this: my short video editor is going to be busy after this one. There's going to be a lot of video shorts. I want to dive in because we kind of bypassed it a little bit about kind of the beginning of Brown's pressure washing, how you got here. I'm pretty sure you have multiple locations, what that looks like, how you operate. Just give me the details of that.
from the startup, or from just what today looks like?
Yeah, from the startup.
Yeah, from the startup, just I didn't even know the difference between an air compressor and a pressure washing pastor. I'm a pressure washing pastor. That's fun.
One's a human, one's a machine. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe we're all machines.
Yeah, so I didn't know the difference, and so from O-rings to ones that are meant for water and ones that I didn't know, and so if you're an individual and you don't know a lot, it's okay, you qualify. But really what it was is I knew how to love people. And so I built a trailer. A friend of mine helped me, and I bought a $300 boat trailer, threw one of those 225-gallon water tanks on it, chemical tank. We do mixed batching. We don't have, this was all before the proportioners, and everybody has to have a proportioner. We still don't use proportioners. It's a very simple, it's soap, it's water, it's downstreamed, and then sometimes we use a roof pump. And I just told people that, hey, we clean. I went on Facebook, and when I said went on Facebook, I would join HIP groups or community pages, and I'd make posts, and I built a website with one of our teenagers in the youth group, and it was very simple. and I just did what other people did, and I didn't make excuses for not doing it. I did it. And so there's if there's any lesson here, it's whatever needs to be done, you just do it and
That's it.
just keep moving forward.
So where are you today? We don't have to talk about numbers or metrics or anything like that, but
Well,
unless you want
today,
to, totally up to you.
so today, what I'm excited about, so we'll talk about that. What I'm excited about is we've inserted what's called EOS inside of our company. And so I've been removed from the company where I sit more of a visionarian. And I really do try to be more of someone who prays for the company, try to encourage good culture. But the less decisions I make, the better the company is. And we have an integrator who is Brady, who's kind of making sure that everything from the day to day is operating properly. So I got one guy who oversees all of our marketing and director. So we have a marketing director, an operations, a sales manager, um, office administrator, and a financial person. And then they serve the team that's underneath them. And so today we're growing out the largest network of what I call pressure washing pastors. And that's what I'm excited about is I invite dudes, or right now it's dudes, into a community that desire to create jobs, make disciples, and serve the city. And so if I were to say, hey, what am I really excited about? It's the As You Go network. And so I really want to invite home service business owners into a intentional community that does the same thing that I did at the beginning with business owners. And so when I say, hey, I spent time with the Lord and then ended up sharing God's word, and then we talked about what business looked like. Now I know all the business stuff. I understand the whole thing that has to be dialed in, from inbound, outbound referrals, affiliates, cash flow, business made simple. I understand all the frameworks. But more important than the frameworks is the mission that you're on. And so we're growing a coaching community of home service business owners that want to use their business as mission. So I'm excited about that. I do utilize my brand, Brown's Pressure Washing, but it's for church planning. And so I connect with church planning groups, and I have one right now that I'm trying to be exclusive with. And I want to help them multiply disciple makers in every city that has our avatars in it, where our customers are in those cities. We want to send what we call co-vocational pastors. They're never going to earn a living from a church. They're going to earn a living from their business, and they're going to be the church in their business. And so I'm partnering with those to use Browns, because as Browns, we have ambassador relationships. We can lower cost on marketing and systems and sales and phones, if all that makes sense. So
Yep.
That's kind of the goal with Browns. So Nashville's doing good. Browns is doing good. Coaching community. And then I'm launching in August, the Dudes Without Dads podcast, and teaching dudes how to be the dad they never had, which I believe is one of the biggest needs we have inside of our country. When you look at, we are the #1 country with single broken families in the world.
Wow.
America leads it. We lead it with 55% of the homes that are broken. If you put that with India, India has 1.5% of the homes that are broken. 98.5% of the families are still together. And as go the families, so does childhood trauma, protecting, providing. Think about all the bad things that have happened in my life as a result of not having a dude to protect me from all the crap that I went through, or took care of my mom. You get her, knocked up, having a baby, take care of her. Why didn't you choose to love her? And so we want to help dudes step up and be the men that God desires them to be with the podcast. So I foresee the future of me spending the majority of my energy trying to help fatherlessness inside the U.S.
Fantastic mission, man. So your why is so strong that you wake up every day ready to put on the suit and go to war. And that's like we talked about earlier. Once you figure that out, man, it's like, get out of my way. I'm taking you out. So I think it's incredible, man. Keep pushing. I was scrolling through your website. I did a little bit of research on you, obviously, before the podcast. And I noticed that you seem to have executed on something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I just never pulled it off. So I want to ask you about it. Your, what's it called? You call it washing for widows or something like that?
Yeah, it's probably one of the most powerful things we do. And about 4 years ago, Josiah, who's in a lot of our YouTube videos, he was doing a house wash. He walked up to the house, knock, knock, knock. Mrs. Jones, I'm here to wash your house, but also notice you have a ramp that's made out of wood, and it looks really covered with some moss. It needs to be cleaned so nobody slips down it. She said, "No, Josiah, I don't need you to clean it today. My husband passed away. We don't use it anymore." So he's like, "Sounds good. I'll get started. If I run into any problems, I'll let you know." He starts cleaning the house. It starts to rain, so he ends up throwing over his hood. He's got a little baseball hat on or Browns hat. And then as he's cleaning, he's hitting the eaves and he's just thinking, and something inside of his head says, "Give this house wash away for free."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "This is proximity, okay?" He ends up saying, "What would Josh think if I give this house wash away for free?" If someone is in proximity to you, they know how you would think and handle a situation. That's why you surround yourself with coaches and like-minded individuals. Josiah said he wouldn't care. Give it away for free. So he ends up finishing it up, go to Mrs. Jones, says, "Mrs. Jones, we're done washing your house." She says, "Great." She turns around, grabs a baggie, like a sandwich bag, with cash and change and says, "Here's the money." And Josiah says, "This one's on us." When they exchanged that, she started bawling, crying. He started bawling, crying. And it felt like this is something we need to see more of. And so he called me a few days later and said, "Joshua, I have a baby chick. Don't step on it." And which means a baby idea. Don't step on it. Visionarian. And he shared, "Hey, why don't we wash every widow's house in Nashville for free?" After sharing the story. And I said, "We'll go out of business." Wash every widow's house. Do you know how many widows there are? And like, we got cogs and soap and insurance and labor. Like, how are we going to, and I said, "I'll chew on it." And so I finished my run. It was like a 9-mile run that morning. And afterwards I called him up and I said, "Just because we can't do it for everybody doesn't mean we can't do it for somebody." I said, "Let's start washing one widow's house a week for free." And from that day forward, we just moved it up and it's grown. We now partner with nonprofit organizations and wash widows' homes that are adopting orphans with the money that is collected from doing projects on these houses. So Browns now, we've been on Green Bay Packer Monday Night Football commercials where we're like, "Nashville, we need your help. We're trying to wash every widow's house for free." I was looking for some sponsorships and donations. We just got a bunch of nominations. And so we didn't make any money on it, but we washed a lot of widows' houses for free. And so now that's one of the things we do. And when folks come to Nashville for a boot camp for training on how to start and scale a business, we do all of our training on widows' homes. And so those that come in for a boot camp don't only learn how to wash a 2,500 square foot house in 45 minutes with excellence. They're also learning what it looks like to pray for a widow afterwards and hear her story, which is game changer. Game changer.
Yeah, so this is near and dear to my heart. My grandmother, her name's Beulah, so I've always tried to figure out a way to implement that name. It'd be difficult to say the least for branding purposes, but she really raised me in a lot of ways, and my grandfather left her for a younger woman. And I'm not gonna go into that for obvious reasons. We're live on a podcast and I have other family, so I'm not gonna dive into that. But her impact on my life was immeasurable. But she was a widow for most of her life, essentially. And she used to call my father her angel because he took care of her entire life. He took care of her. And so I have that example, and that growing up, my grandmother would come back from the grocery store and it would be the silliest thing. But to me, it felt like I was on top of the world. I would run to the car. There's zero chance this woman is carrying a bag into this house she lived in the house with us most of my life. I said, there's zero chance I'm letting this woman carry a bag. So I would literally pile up every bag. And, I look ridiculous carrying these bags into the house. And I knew if I didn't take every single bag, she would end up picking one up, and that would have bothered me. And it's because of the example my father gave me, taking care of her and the importance of us taking care of her. And so I've always had in the back of my mind, man, I wish there was a way I could figure this out, but it looks like you've dialed it in, and I'm just going to copy you if that's okay with you.
Yeah, we want to see every widow taken care of. And in reality, our team members need to see what sacrificial love looks like.
Mm.
And, onboarding your team members is important. And so when you talk about, in your SOPs, you want to have that, hey, one of the things we want to do is teach men how to act like men. And one of those is take care of God's women. And that's where you would end up sharing. And so one of the ways we do that is we wash widows' houses. And then if you're bold enough, if you're up to it, you can just say, hey, how can I pray for you? And then just pray over a widow. Man, you're talking about the power of loving somebody you've never met and giving away free work. It's a game changer.
Well, we talked about this in my last podcast as well with John, that you really don't know the impact you're having on someone. It could be the simplest little thing. I had a teacher, I'll keep the story short, but the teacher basically recognized this ability in me at a very young age and said that I was the best note taker in class. And he didn't even say it to me. He said it to somebody else. And I remember sitting in class, completely ignoring everything, didn't want to be there. And I overheard it. And I remember looking at him thinking, what? Did he say my name? And it completely changed the trajectory of my life. And I didn't realize that until I was an adult, that I realized that that was what started me out believing that I'm good at this stuff. And it's part of the reason I'm an entrepreneur and a business owner, because I figured out at an early age that this is actually possible for me. Maybe I don't fit the mold, but there's this trajectory that was started at a young age because one person made this simple statement, and he has no idea to this day that was a powerful impact on my life. Crazy.
Yeah. And so every Friday we have leadership development, and I'm going to use that story inside of our leadership development.
Cool.
And the question will be, what have other people spoken into you that meant a lot to you? And then what have people spoke over you that you're still carrying around that destroyed you? I still remember, and I know we got to wrap up, but I remember a well-meaning pastor when I was like 9 or 10, he ended up saying the chances that he will abuse other people in the future is high, like 90%, because he's been abused as a child. I heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that. And by the grace of God, have not fallen into that. And I hope to be a cycle breaker. Just because we had people that didn't treat us the way that we ought to be treated doesn't mean by the grace of God, we don't have the ability to treat people better than what we were treated. So
good, man. You're the perfect guest for this podcast, because this is what this podcast is about. It's about living life through the noise. It's about recognizing God's voice instead of your voice, instead of sin's voice, instead of the voice of the world. And I think that your mission and what you're doing right now is so important. And I just want to encourage you to dig deep, man. Dig deep. Awesome stuff, man. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you for having me on as a guest today. And if I can add any value to anybody, they can check out pressurewashingpastor.com. And right now I'm on mission just to invite people into a coaching community. And it's basically donations. As you make donations, it goes to the Dudes Without Dads podcast to help end fatherlessness inside. Well, when I say end, to do our best to help end fatherlessness in the U.S.
And all that information can be found on the pressurewashingpastor.com.
Yeah, that's kind of the entry road into the webinar, and then we'll launch the Dudes Without Dads. But the coaching community starts inside of the Pressure Washing Pastor webinar.
Fantastic, man. Thank you so much, dude. It's been a joy. 59 minutes and 34 seconds. We did good.
Let's go.
All right, y'all. Thank you for watching.
Peace.